The body of Fuad Shukr, the number 2 man in the Hezbollah resistance movement in Lebanon, has been located in the rubble of the block of flats in Dahia, which were attacked by Benjamin Netanyahu 48 hours ago. 2 children and 2 women were murdered in the attack. Shukr and his bodyguard are 2 additional fatalities. More than 60 people were wounded in an area I know well, where I have former in-laws living, a tightly packed urban setting in which high flats can collapse like pancakes when hit by military ordnance. And that is exactly what happened. The number 2 man in Hezbollah, at least titularly number 2, but as another slain military political commander, Ismail Haniyeh, said just a day or 2 ago to the Iranian leader, when leaders fall, other leaders rise up to take their place. Hezbollah will be shocked and horrified at what has happened to Shukr, but it will not be weakened by it. If anything, all the experience shows that murdering leaders of resistance movements doesn't weaken them, but strengthens them. The question is, what happens now? Israel didn't just bomb Beirut, they also bombed Damascus. And crucially, for the narrative this evening, they also bombed Tehran, and they killed the aforementioned Ismail Haniyeh, for the last 10 months, the chief negotiator on the Palestinian side for the exchange of prisoners and for the conclusion of a ceasefire deal. If there's anyone out there, especially in the British government, who any longer harbors the illusion that Israel is in any way interested in getting its so-called hostages back, and is interested in any way in bringing to an end a conflict which has killed and wounded hundreds of thousands of people in 10 months in a concentration camp just a few miles long and a few miles deep. If there's anyone out there who thinks Israel, Netanyahu, is interested in peace, they are not paying attention. The truth is, everybody knows, actually, that they are not interested in peace. They don't give a damn about hostages or freeing them. They are interested only in the extirpation, the annihilation of the Palestinian people. And they have killed Hamas leader after leader after leader. And this one will be no different. Except I've met him. Along with, actually, my Labour MP predecessor, the late and lamented Tony Lloyd, who also met with Ismail Haniyeh. I met him when I took a siege-breaking convoy into Gaza in 2009. That's right, it all started on October the 7th of last year. But in 2009, I had to lead a convoy of British citizens to break the siege on Gaza. Haniyeh wanted to award me a Palestinian passport as a mark of gratitude and recognition for the efforts that we had made. But he had none to hand, so he gave me his. So I am the owner of a passport belonging to the man that was murdered this morning at dawn in Tehran in an IRGC, a Revolutionary Guard facility in which he was staying, having visited Iran to pay his respects to and meet for the first time the new president of the Islamic Republic of Iran. As Ayatollah Khamenei said today, the Israeli enemy have slaughtered a guest in our home, and only revenge of the highest order could possibly pay for that. There's no sign yet of anything in the air. Perhaps it won't come in the air. There's no sign of anything heading towards Israel. Perhaps the target for the revenge will not be in Israel, or even necessarily Israeli. The Iranian government said just an hour or 2 ago that the United States must share co-responsibility for this great crime of murdering a negotiator, a man who was in charge of negotiating with the country that then murdered him. It's positively medieval, not since medieval times. Actually, can I recall a high-profile negotiator being murdered by the people he was negotiating with. Ismail Haniyeh is in a better place now, and his aura will only grow in the pantheon in which he now stands. And someone has probably already been chosen to take his place as the head of the political bureau of the Islamic resistance movement in Palestine, usually known as Hamas. I say Hamas because you get algorithmically strangled and shadow banned if you say it out loud in the land of the free, as we used to call ourselves. Ismail Haniyeh's replacement will probably be Khalid Mishaal, who previously held that position before. Mishaal will have exactly the same political line, exactly the same steadfastness as his predecessor, who had exactly the same political line and exactly the same steadfastness as his predecessor, Rantisi, who had exactly the same political line and exactly the same fortitude and steadfastness as his predecessor, the founder of Hamas, Sheikh Yassin. Now, I'm not a supporter of Hamas. I don't know how many times I have to say that before some thick skulls can take it in. I'm a supporter of Palestine's Nelson Mandela, Marwan Barghouti, whose son, Arab Barghouti, is our first guest this evening. But the Palestinian people must choose their own leaders. They did choose Haniyeh, and Haniyeh was their leader. So the situation now can only be bleak, can't it? Hezbollah are going to have to retaliate for the murder of one of their top men. Iran will have to retaliate for this gratuitous and grievous blow to their national prestige. To have a visitor slain in such a way on their soil is a very, very serious blow to their amour propre, to their dignity, to their prestige as a country. And Hamas will have to retaliate. Maybe it doesn't have, for the moment, much to retaliate with, but its retaliation will take the form of stiffening its resistance and their determination not to be exterminated by their Israeli enemies. And, undoubtedly, it's the end of negotiations for a ceasefire. So you are going to have to continue to watch the horrors that continued again today. 46 people murdered today in Gaza alone. I have no figures for the West Bank, but be sure those numbers are about to steeply rise. 77 were wounded today in the Gaza Strip. One of them was an Al Jazeera journalist, Mr. Al Ghul, who had his head blown off, so that sitting in the front of his car was a torso with a press vest on it, but no head. The head had been blown clean off by a targeted strike, targeted at the Al Jazeera broadcast journalist of note, who for the last 10 months, despite having been picked up, despite having been tortured by Israel, had continued to tell the truth to his viewers in their hundreds of millions across the Arab world and across the rest of the globe on social media and on other networks. Mr. Al Ghul is, I don't know which number of journalists that have been deliberately targeted and murdered by Israel. Which brings me to the next target of my ire this evening. Elon Musk has gone quite mad. Or Elon Musk is a deeply compromised individual. Because it can't be for money that he's doing what he's doing, or can it? It can't be because the shekels were stuffed into his pocket, unlike the American political class in the Congress and so on. Must be another reason why Elon Musk, the man who says he champions free speech, is found in a grand embrace with the man who habitually murders journalists in their hundreds, who blows the head of prominent broadcast journalists, appears to be Elon Musk's best friend. And this friendship is now laying waste to the Twitter accounts of prominent Palestinian supporters on the X platform, on the Twitter platform. But it's not just his newfound love of Benjamin Netanyahu. Newfound because even 12 months ago it was scarcely discernible, and other signs were beginning to be discernible, like daffodils in spring. But now Musk has reverted to all out, all guns blazing, no pun intended, support for the murder machine that is the Israeli cabinet. The question is, why? The question is, will he allow me to say these words on his platform? The question is, will he continue to shadow ban and algorithmically suppress anything and everything that puts his newfound best friend, Benjamin Netanyahu, in a bad light? And it's hard to go a single day without finding umpteen examples of the reasons why Netanyahu is a very, very, very bad man. But it's not just that. Musk has now thrown his considerable social media weight, and one presumes his very deep pockets, into trying to overthrow the government of Venezuela. Why? Why, Elon Musk? What's Venezuela got to do with you? I know why you said a couple of years ago that we will coup wherever we want to coup, because you had a material interest in the lithium deposits in Bolivia. But what skin have you got in the Venezuelan game? Why are you trying to overthrow the legitimate government of Venezuela that's just been re-elected for a new presidential term in the form of President Nicolas Maduro? Now, I've got every reason to believe that it's to do with the black gold that lies in profusion under the soil and under the waters in the aforementioned country. Although Musk, on the face of it, is not actually in the oil business. In fact, one is led to believe that he's not much of a fan of fossil fuels, except when they're burning his way through the atmosphere on the way to Mars. What exactly is Musk doing in Venezuela? And who is he doing it for? Well, the best guess is he's doing it for the American government. The American government that he purports to despise. The American government that he's thrown tens of millions of dollars into defeating in November at the next general election. The American deep state, CIA, National Security Agency, and the multiplicity of agencies that used to run Twitter and that Musk said he had driven out of the building. But now he's openly working for them in the attempt to overthrow the government of Maduro. Now, it's true, Maduro is a stalwart supporter of the Palestinians, and it's true that his opposition were equally zealous supporters of Netanyahu and Israel. So that may or may not have something to do with it. But we've now reached a stage where the richest man in the world, with the most powerful media platform in the world, has set his sails on a course of regime change in a global south country with strategic partnership relations with Russia. And here I'm going to say something that some of you won't like, including some of the Venezuelans won't like. It's about time Venezuela stopped trying to please the powers in the West that will never rest until they have overthrown them. Why are you giving the United States these periodic opportunities to mount a color revolution, to mount a coup in your country? Britain had no elections when Hitler was at the Channel ports. The British government formed a national unity government and stayed in power throughout the war, Why are you, Venezuela, continuing to please these human rights watchers and NGOs and Western governments by giving them opportunity after opportunity for their satraps, their stooges, their puppets to try and overthrow the popular revolution of the Venezuelan masses still marching, still standing firm in the name of Hugo Chavez and the Bolivarian Revolution? If it was me, I'd say that's it. The Constitution is suspended. There will be no more elections. There will be no more opposition satraps running around Venezuela with millions of dollars to spend, subverting the government. There will be no more gold-toothed emigres in Miami calling the shots in periodic periods of elections and other activities in Venezuela. It's time to shut up shop. It's time to throw yourselves fully into the bricks. It's time to do what Nicaragua has done and invite your friends in the bricks to assist in your security, to accept that the West will never tolerate you. No matter how many elections you have, no matter how many referenda you have, no matter how much of a constitution you have, no matter how pristine the Carter Center tells everyone your elections are, no matter how many international observers you bring to testify that it was a flawless election, none of that matters. They have decided already that your revolution is going to be brought down, that your president is going to be destroyed. It's time to rely on your friends. There ain't no regime change operations in Cuba because they know how futile they are. They know that the Cuban people and their government, their party, their people, and their army are one hand in defense of Cuban sovereignty, and it's about time that Venezuela took the same course of action. Time only for a brief reference to a miserable little crime. Hugh Edwards was the voice of the British state mouthpiece, the BBC. He commented on royal weddings and funerals. He commented on the state opening of Parliament. He commented and compared the great occasions of state in the United Kingdom, and all the time that he was being paid as the highest paid BBC employee, he was a dirty little pervert. A pervert that made indecent images of children. He was already in a scandal, but that scandal is not what he pled guilty today for. He pled guilty today because his phone number came up in an entirely unrelated case involving a paedophile in Cardiff in Wales. That paedophile, who made lots of images of children in indecent poses and indecent activities, was intimately linked with Hugh Edwards. And Hugh Edwards was making indecent images on his devices from a jailed paedophile in Wales. It doesn't get much more disgraceful than that. In January, the BBC gave Hugh Edwards a further increase in salary of £40,000, making him the highest paid BBC broadcaster in history. The BBC, which lectures all and sundry as to how they should behave. The BBC, which lectures all and sundry. The Hugh Edwards that lectured all and sundry. Who can forget his memorable interview with the other scumbag Andrew Marr, formerly of the BBC, outside number 10 Downing Street, on the day that the Iraqi government was toppled back in 2003. Edwards teed it up for Andrew Marr How does Tony Blair stand this evening? He asked Andrew Marr. Andrew Marr answered, he stands a much taller man than all of his critics, who suddenly look very, very small. It's the mother of all talk shows. Stay tuned.